This is Steve Weeks. Can our host let me know when everyone is back on and we can begin?
This is the moderator. It appears that everyone's back, although I don't see camera on for Megan Ellis. And there we go.
Thank you
It
very
looks like we're
much.
ready for roll call.
Great. Thanks for your help. The should we've done roll call once. Should we do roll call again coming back from the other session?
Yes, just for our records.
Okay, then I would ask Allison to do the roll call of the board.
Yes. Steve Weeks,
Steve Weeks, yes.
Kelly Mae Pham,
Callie Mae Pham, present.
Jackie Crabtree,
Jackie Crabtree, present.
Megan Ellis,
Present.
Tanya Fairley,
Tanya Fairley, present.
Reese Isbell,
Here.
Derek Matos,
Derek Matos present.
and Christy Tran, absent.
Okay, it sounds like we have a quorum. We've reestablished a quorum. And welcome back, board members. You know, we were all hoping that this would be our first post-COVID live meeting, but unfortunately, we are not post-COVID yet. So hope to see you all in person at maybe our first board meeting of next year. Keep your fingers crossed on that. But I do want to officially welcome our newest board member, Reese Isbell. And Reese is our most recent governor appointment. He was appointed as a public member. He has a very interesting background. He is currently senior account executive of Gravitate PR. He also has a strong political, public service, and nonprofit background. He's just coming off of 2.5 years on the San Francisco Rent Board. And I think Reese can be a real asset to this board with all of his varied nonprofit and public service background. So in the name of all of us, I'm sure we welcome him and wish him very well. We tried you under fire today, so that was a good thing, Reese.
Thank you for the welcome.
Of course, thank you. As I said earlier today, that we're going to be, I know that people have a lot of questions in the general public and licensees and schools on SB 803, but we're not going to address the questions today. Where the board is discussing just implementation plan for the bill. And since this is a regularly scheduled board meeting, it's not a question and answer event for the bill. So again, I encourage you to email the board with questions you may have, and I'm sure you're going to be seeing some follow-up on our website on how we get the word out as this whole thing starts to develop. Also for the public, please remember to keep your comments relevant to the particular issue on the agenda only, and hold your public responses to 2 minutes. So with that, I would ask our board members if there is anyone that would like to make any remarks. They're free to do so now. All seem to be very content and happy with where you are now, so we'll move on. We'll go into a discussion, item number 5 on our agenda, which is discussion and possible approval of the July 26, 2021 board meeting minutes. So if you had a chance to look at them, if you have any questions, please bring them up now.
I have a quick question about whether I should abstain since I was not part of that meeting.
Probably so.
Okay, this is
Probably
Sabina.
so. Yeah.
You're welcome to vote on the minutes. You're just approving the minutes. You're not approving that that's exactly what happened. If you weren't present, you're also relying on your other board members who were present to confirm that that was indeed what was present. You're just confirming the record of the meeting.
Thank you.
Well, I tried to eliminate your vote, but it just didn't happen. I apologize to the rest of the board. Okay. Any other questions that anyone may have on the minutes? Okay, if there's no questions, do we have a motion?
This is Callie Mae Pham. I'll move to approve the minutes.
Great. And second?
I'll second Fairley. Oh, This is Tanya Fairley. I'll
Tanya.
second.
Tanya, okay, Callie and Tanya there. Okay, good. At this point, let's move to public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen and type either comment or I would like to make a comment and send to all panelists. We'll go in the order that comments are received. And once you have requested that you would like to make a comment, I will request to unmute your microphone. And then at that point, you'll be able to speak for 2 minutes with a 30-second warning. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, and it does look like we have a request from an individual identified as Tala D. One moment while I get my timer ready. All right, Tala, I will request to unmute your microphone now. Please click that unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device. All right, and you are unmuted.
At the PETA Foundation. I'm here to discuss the unlawful fish spa services currently being offered at Sequest Folsom and to request that the board take action to enforce its ban.
I apologize. It appears that this is not on topic. This item is about the meeting minutes. So unless you have an item about the meeting minutes, I ask that you please hold your comments until comments for items not on the agenda. All right. It appears that there are no requests for comments for items or for the meeting minutes. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel for now?
Please, thank you.
All right. The Q&A
And
panel
now
is
we-
now closed.
Okay, now we are ready to vote on the minutes. Allison, would you read the role of the board?
Yes. Steve Weeks,
Yes.
Callie Mae Pham,
Yes.
Jackie Crabtree,
Yes.
Megan Ellis,
Yes.
Tanya Fairley,
Yes.
Reese Isbell,
Yes.
Derek Matos.
Yes.
Thank you.
And the motion is passed. The minutes are approved. So now we move on to item 6 of our agenda today, and that is hearing from the Department of Consumer Affairs, an update which includes several different areas that could be of great interest to us. And my understanding that Deputy Director Carrie Williams will be presenting the update.
Carrie Holmes.
Holmes, sorry.
Good morning. Are you able to hear me?
This is the moderator. Yes, we can hear you, Carrie.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Good morning, Board President Steve Weeks and board members. I am Carrie Holmes, and don't worry, we get each other's emails all the time. Deputy Director, Board and Bureau Relations at the Department of Consumer Affairs. Thank you for allowing me to provide a department update. I would also like to welcome Reese Isbell as the newest member of the board, and also Megan Ellis, who it's not your first meeting, but my first opportunity to welcome you to DCA. Congratulations both on your appointments, and thank you for your willingness to serve. DCA appreciates all board members and staff who have continued to serve through a pandemic that has affected us all in many ways. A special thank you to Executive Officer Christy Underwood, who serves as a key partner at DCA as part of the Executive Officer Cabinet and Enlighten Licensing Project. We all benefit from your input and experience. We are all working together to find the right balance of staying connected and productive while also staying safe and healthy. DCA and all boards and bureaus continue to look to the future to use lessons learned to identify long-term efficiencies and policy changes. Staff are working in the office to provide the most effective consumer protection and public service, while also utilizing telework where appropriate. DCA is assembling a task force to help the department create a telework policy that will provide further clarity and structure for managers and staff. To combat the spread of COVID-19 and protect vulnerable communities, California is implementing enhanced safety measures for state employees and workers in healthcare settings. State employees must show proof of vaccination or be subject to regular COVID-19 testing. DCA's testing program kicked off in early October with the launch of the DCA headquarters pilot site. Select programs are designated to test at the headquarters, and the list of programs recently expanded due to the capabilities of the site. Board and committee members must follow health and safety protocols if they plan to visit a DCA location or attend an in-person board meeting. Members will verify vaccination or follow testing protocols in accordance with that location's requirements. Please communicate plans for in-person meetings as soon as possible so DCA can assist with coordination of teleconference options, vaccination verification, and COVID-19 testing if necessary. DCA recognizes the difficulty of planning for future meetings as the pandemic continues to evolve. As the law stands today, remote meetings are allowed until January 30th, 2022, after which time meetings will need to be in person in accordance with all the aspects of the Open Meetings Act. We don't know what additional changes to the law may be coming, but I think we all recognize there are benefits to remote meeting options, such as increased public participation, cost savings, and a lower carbon footprint due to reduced travel. DCA encourages boards and bureaus to continue utilizing remote meetings this year to protect the health of staff, board members, and the public. We will keep you updated on any additional changes to meeting requirements. Whether meeting remotely or in person, DCA wants to help you keep your board fully seated with excellent members and diverse voices. Currently, the board has one vacancy, a public member to be appointed by the governor. With the passage of SB 803, the board will also need 4 new members in January, 2 licensees, and 2 more public members. There will especially be a need for an esthetician and an electrologist. If anyone is interested in serving, please visit board member resources on DCA's homepage or go to the governor's appointments webpage to apply. DCA's communications team has been working on a new communications toolkit to assist the board with member recruitment, which will be available in multiple languages before the end of the year. DCA has been made aware of various scams affecting boards and bureaus. We have shared information about the scams on the DCA website and social media. Please take a moment to visit the DCA Fraud Alert website to be aware of the scams and learn how to protect yourself, licensees, and consumers from malicious individuals. As a final reminder, 2021 is a mandatory sexual harassment prevention training year. This means all employees and board members are required to complete the training during this year, which is rapidly approaching its end. Board members will access the training through the Learning Management System, or LMS, which is DCA's training portal. We have created profiles for each of you in the LMS, and your executive officer knows how you will log in and access the training. Board and Bureau Relations is also happy to assist you with any questions or concerns you may have about the LMS. As always, Board and Bureau Relations is here to help. If there's anything we can do to assist, please reach out. This concludes my presentation, and I will hand it back over to Board President Weeks.
Thank you very much for joining us today and enlightening us on these points. There's a very, very important for us to remember too. Thank you. With that, we will move on to our executive officers report. And Christy Underwood, we're always anxious to hear from you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to just go ahead and jump right in on this report because, as you can imagine, it's going to be quite extensive today. We're going to start off in your packets with our licensing statistics. So we're in the beginning of a fiscal year, so you're only seeing our first quarter being reported. I can tell you that our numbers are going up. We are slowly returning back to normal in all areas of the board. Licensing is moving very fast with our volume. We are booked right now through our exams through the end of the year. I'll talk a little bit more about that in our SB 803 implementation plan. And we are starting to see our inspectors being more back out in the field, And so we're starting to get inspections in. We're starting to see more violations in the field, which will increase all of our numbers as that trickles through citation process and then ultimately into DRC. So licensing is pretty steady. You'll see our exam stats for the first quarter. We have had some, excuse me, some practical exam results have been low for our esthetician and our manicurist. That is a result of a new exam that was implemented back in July. It was just an updated exam. There's information on our website where we've had the national organization do a town hall with the schools to talk about the changes that took place in that exam. But anytime we see a new exam rollout, it's common that we see those exam numbers go lower. They've already started to climb back up. So I think you'll see a difference in that in our next report. Moving on, you'll see again, we continue to struggle with our Spanish pass rates. We've broken this out for all of you to see the difference between our exam pass rates through someone who's come from out of country, someone who has gone to a traditional school program, and then someone who has gone to the apprentice program. So you can see those, and then on page 4, you'll see it broken down by language for each of those categories. Again, our license is issued. I think we're well on way to being back to normal with what COVID has done with us, and seeing our volumes return to normal. And moving on to our disciplinary review committee, our numbers are still low in that area. I anticipate we'll start to see that grow again. We are looking, we had a DRC scheduled, some of you know, and we decided to postpone that hearing. It was in person, and at that time with the Delta variant that was happening, this was going to be held in Los Angeles County. It was just a little bit still too risky to have that many people coming into a location to have a hearing. So we will be working to set up a location and hopefully get an in-person DRC hearing in Los Angeles soon, especially since we are seeing a lot of the COVID numbers are going down in certain areas. So we'll be working on that, and we'll be reaching out to members to see who could make that hearing.
Christy, can I ask a quick DRC question? How many establishments do you know offhand? How many establishments refuse inspections? I mean, we only see the appeals on DRC, so we know what happens there. But do you know what the ratio would be of people that just pay the money and don't appeal the inspections?
I do not, but that's definitely data we could pull.
Yeah, that might be interesting. I mean, right now for refusing an inspection is a $250 fine.
I believe so.
$250 for an establishment not to allow an inspector in seems to me is way too little. They can pay $250 to eliminate thousands of dollars in fines. Plus they have the advance notice that they will be inspected again soon. Have we ever looked at raising that amount of money?
We have raised it. It used to be much lower.
Oh my God. Okay. In order to raise it to a higher rate, that would have to be done at a future board meeting, I would assume. So maybe we could put something on the agenda to take a look at that rate, because I just think that's, that's not, it's an unfair rate. They're taking advantage of the system doing that. And that's why I asked the number of people that have actually paid the fine. Second question.
I'm getting information right now from staff that it can go up to $750 for their first offense for refusal. Oftentimes that's connected with, not always, but it is often connected with an interference. It depends on how the refusal was provided to our inspector. Sometimes, unfortunately, it can get hostile, and then we will add in an interference citation. That interference fine is $1,000.
Good.
So the refusal starts off at $250. The second offense is $500, and the third is $750.
But I could be in my establishment working on a customer, see an inspector and just lock the door and pay a $250 fine.
Yes.
Yeah, I still think we have to look at that. But it brings to point another case too, is I think as board members recently, we've been seeing too many cases of situations of an assault against our inspectors. And this is a criminal offense. I mean, we have to stand up for our inspectors and at the very least know that they're not going to be assaulted, going to these salons. For an assault like that, someone pushes an inspector, let's say, that's just $1,000 fine, up to $1,000 fine.
That is $1,000 fine, but we are calling 911 and there's police involved. Anytime someone lays a hand on a state employee, we file charges and we call the police immediately.
Excellent, excellent. So there is follow-up on that. I mean, to me, someone that lays a hand on a state employee, they should automatically go to hearing and lose their license. I mean, I think that's the most serious thing that can happen out there. Okay, thank you.
Okay. And just on that same note, part of SB 803 does require us to look at our fines. So we're going to be looking at our fines regardless in the coming year. And so it'll be a perfect opportunity for us to look at each one of those sections to make any changes.
And Christy, this is Jackie. Before you go ahead with the next, because I didn't know if we were going to come back to questions, or should I just let you go through the whole report, then go back to questions?
No, let's pause here for questions.
Okay. So this is such great information about how you broke down the pass-fail rate when people are coming from schools versus apprentice programs, because obviously we know the Spanish speaking has been something of such a concern for so long. Now that we have a little idea here that it's a little, it's showing, a lower rate with the apprentice programs, is there something we can do to address that with the apprentice programs?
Yes, we are currently in the process of the regulation package. The board probably saw that regulation package a couple meetings ago, if not longer. It's just a long process for regulations, but we do have a full regulatory package that we believe will strengthen the apprenticeship program. For instance, current regulations do not even require an apprentice to have a textbook. So one of the things we are finding is that they can work in the salon because they're getting the on-the-job training, but they're not passing the written exam. So we believe with our strengthening of those regulations that we will see improvements in the apprentice program. We think it's still a valid pathway to licensure, and we just think it needs some work done on what we require. Those regulations are currently with the Department of Consumer Affairs regulations unit being reviewed. We're hoping to hear back from them by the end of this week, and then they will probably be on the agenda again at the next board meeting.
Awesome, thank you.
Christy, I have a question.
Uh-huh.
This is Derek Matos. In regard to the pass-fail, I mean, historically, we've had more failure on the written side than we've had on the practical side. Would that be correct?
Yes.
So with the removal of the practical exam now, how do you feel this is going to affect our licensees trying to get in? It seems to me that this is more of a hindrance as a pathway to licensure than anything.
Well, they have to pass.
I'm sorry.
I mean, I don't think it's going to show. I don't think we'll see any difference because they still have to pass the written to get a license. So those right now who are failing the written are not getting a license. So they might have to take it more times. I think in our licensure rate, I don't think we'll see a difference because they still have to pass the written today to get that license.
Awesome. And then my next question is, when we're looking at apprenticeship programs and regular schooling, I mean, with the change now with having externships, do you find a similarity to the apprenticeship program and the same things that are being done to the apprenticeship program to make sure for books and all those kind of things, will those be implemented for the externship as a responsibility to establishments, or would that be the school's responsibility to provide that? I know in reading the documentation, there's supposed to be some sort of communication between establishments and the schools, but I kind of want to just verify who has the onus on making sure that that happens.
It's the schools. So to participate in the extern program, you have to be enrolled in a school program, and then the extern program comes between the school and the establishment. We actually don't know who externs are. There's no requirement that they have to tell the board who these individuals are because they're students, and we have no tracking of students. So but they are enrolled in a school program. So the school is supposed to be following all those existing requirements of making sure that they're meeting the curriculum and receiving their textbooks and so forth.
Thank you, Christy.
Welcome. Any
Hi,
other
this is-
questions?
Hi, this is Callie Mae. I have a question about the DRCs. As we can see, a lot of the ones in the South are still pending. Do you have any idea how many sessions would be required in order to catch up?
I don't off the top of my head, but usually we do 2.5 days. I would think probably 3 months worth is pending right now, 3 sessions.
Okay. And is there any kind of disciplinary effects while they're pending? I know we've had to reschedule several times. So does that affect them in any way, this wait to get to the hearing?
It does not. As long as a individual has their citation under appeal, they can continue to renew their licenses if needed, and they can continue to work. So that's in statute that we allow them. It's not their fault that they haven't had a hearing, but even before this situation happened, it's as soon as their citation is under appeal, it's in a sense, any discipline is on hold for them.
Thank you, Chrissy.
All right, moving on. We have our enforcement quarterly statistics. Pretty standard information on our enforcement statistics. We're not seeing, anything that jumps out that's unordinary in that area. We've provided on page 10 a breakdown of the types of complaints we receive. You can see that a lot of our complaints are anonymous complaints. A lot are internal, and then the public. The internal complaints are when an inspector goes to conduct a routine inspection and find something that would warrant opening an enforcement case on. So maybe they've found practice of medicine taking place, or egregious health and safety violations, then that gets referred to our enforcement unit to have a complaint opened, and those are classified under the internal area. And then we break down our complaints received for the last 5 fiscal years by category. Those are it's a very broad category that we provide you. We obviously have a lot of health and safety, and within that health and safety, there's a lot of subcategories that we look at internally to try to track any trends that we happen to see coming up. Any questions on enforcement? All right, hearing none, the next is 2 pages are our budget. The first page is our final year. We didn't provide that at our last meeting, so we're providing it to you now. And then also our fund condition. I will tell you that there will be a lot of discussion coming in the next probably couple of board meetings on our budget. With the signing of SB 803, as you know, we have a lot of changes to implement. Those changes are going to impact our budget. Rather they reduce our budget, we obviously are losing the practical exam, so we will no longer have a need for 2 examination sites. So that is 2 leases that we are currently in that we will have to determine what to do with. or how one of them will be able to get out of because we're in a soft lease, but one of them we are not. So those discussions are still happening. But the budget's really going to be looked at. I've been already working with DCA Budget's office very closely because there's a chance that we could need to look at reducing fees. We could look at reducing our allocation. We don't know yet. It's still a work in progress since this bill was just signed in October. So just a fair warning that there will be lots of budget discussions in our next coming meetings. I'm sure Steve is going to be very happy about that. But we'll definitely be needing some help because, as some of you know, the state budgeting process is quite difficult. And so we'll be calling in some of our experts from DCA to help us with that. But definitely a lot of budget changes will be happening with the implementation of SB 803.
Christy, I have a question on the 2021 budget. So there could be some impact on 2021 as far as our last quarter of 21, but not significant, I would assume.
Right.
And the other thing is, could you inform me, printing? I noticed we had allocated $275 per printing, and we went to $709, and that still may not complete. Was there something came about that was a surprise to us as far as printing?
It was likely a couple of things. We did do a lot of printing to get information out on COVID. Right. We also, with the governor waiving fees, we printed a lot of licenses a lot sooner than we normally would have. In fact, we did a huge bulk print of licenses at one time because when the governor made that order, we were basically a few months behind. So we printed about 3 months worth of licenses at once. So that was huge.
Bulk licenses or individually subscribed licenses?
So that would be all licenses for anybody who was licensed, and anybody who expired in the months that we were behind got generated all at once. And those fell into that fiscal year.
Thank you.
Right, hearing no more questions, we're going to go ahead and move on. We have a brief outreach update. I did attend the National Association of Barber Boards of America conference this past September. It was very interesting. It was held in DC. It was an organization that's been around for quite some time, but this was the first time California has attended, not a huge participation of other states. It's, still, there's a lot of states still that are not allowing travel. So that could have had something to do with it, why their numbers were a little low. But it was mostly an informative, talking about the barber profession. It was nice to hear other barber boards talk about how the barber industry is growing in their states, as well as California. So it was very positive. It was great networking to touch base with some other executive officers that are over barber boards. A lot of states are combined barber Cosmo, but there are still barber boards out there. So it was my first time getting a chance to interact with them. I think hopefully they also provided classes to their attendees. So it was a real nice event. I was happy to attend that for the first time. And then I also in early October, attended our technical assistance group for the Cosmetology Compact. And so this is looking at compact licensure for cosmetologists and barbering. And it is, a compact license. I think we talked about it a little bit in our last meeting, but it's basically the best example is your driver's license. You have a driver's license in California, and that allows you to drive in Nevada because all states are entered into a driver's license compact. There's other industries that do that as well. I believe physical therapy is a big one. If you're a physical therapist in a state that's participating in the compact, then you can go to another state, and with that license, you can practice. So it's this project is funded by the Department of Defense, and it's headed up by the Council for State Governments. And it's funded by the Department of Defense because of the concern with military families and their need to travel from state to state and have their significant others be able to work quickly and over those state lines. So it was a great meeting for 2 days. And now that will be our only in-person meeting. The next of them are going to be online, and we're going to be actually developing the compact. It'll eventually come to the board. It'll be a piece of legislation or proposed legislation that we will bring to the board, and it'll be the board's choice to determine if they want to participate as part of the compact, because we don't have to. They still have a lot of states involved in developing this. That doesn't necessarily mean that all those states will agree to it. But we'll present a piece of proposed legislation, and then if the board chooses to participate in that, then we would look for an author to carry the bill and to establish a statute that would allow us to be part of the compact. Still a couple years away from that. There's a lot of work involved writing this piece of legislation and the requirements that go around a compact license, but it's really exciting. It was a great group of people from all over the country that are participating in this. We had a licensee from California that is participating with me, and then lots of other executive officers throughout the country. So it was a great event, and you'll be hearing a lot more about that. We'll probably keep it as a regular agenda item under my report to update you regularly on that. Any questions?
This is Reese. I just have a quick question for the meeting of the boards. Was there any commentary or discussion around what we were passing with SB 803 at the time from other states?
There was. Actually, the discussion came up in both meetings that I was in. And there's very mixed emotions about SB 803, mostly regarding the hour reduction. There are other states that have 1,000 hours, so obviously they weren't that concerned. But it's definitely been not quite a shocker, I wouldn't say, to this country, but they were very interested in what is happening in California. Did someone else have a question?
Yes, Christy, I just had a question in regard to the compact. Just so I'm clear, the compact is not just for veteran families. This is for anybody, is that correct?
That's
so this
correct.
is separate from the bill that was just introduced for families?
Absolutely. It's completely separate.
All right, thank you.
Okay, and then lastly on the item, there was a meeting scheduled for this coming week of a virtual outreach event, but unfortunately that got canceled, so that is not happening. We do know that the Professional Beauty Association, PBA, is putting on their show in Long Beach in January, the ISSE show, and we are slated to attend that. Hopefully everything goes as well, and we are able to get back to a show to see people. It would be great. All right, next is the practice status survey results. We might have mentioned this at the last meeting, but keeping in mind with this survey is part of an individual's renewal. And right now, no one is having to renew. There's the governor has waived fees for the next 2 years, 2 years, so that everybody is receives that opportunity to have a free license, and so they're not having to log in and renew their license, which means they're not completing the survey. So our numbers are going to be a little bit swayed on this. This practice status survey. All right, moving on to our strategic plan. In your packet, you will see our strategic action plan for our strategic plan. Keeping in mind that we started the development of this was a 5-year plan, and we started the development on this plan back in 2017, which seems like so very long ago. But in 2017, I don't think we had any board members that are on the board now currently as board members then, but we did go through an extensive session, not only with our leadership team internally, but we also had surveys done by board members. DCA does all of this for us. They have a great unit that does our strategic planning for us. And we will be looking to start this process again in the year 2022, because we'll need a new plan after 2022. So if you look at the action plan that is in your packets, you'll see that lots of items we have completed, and then you'll also see that lots of items are on hold. So a lot has happened over the last 5 years of the strategic plan. And there were certain things that we just weren't able to accomplish, either due to, well, quite honestly, due to sunset review. If you don't know, some of our newer members, our sunset review should have happened back in 2018, but it was delayed 1 year and then COVID hit. So our sunset review that just took place that generated SB 803 actually should have been done back in 2018. So with the sunset review kind of hanging out there, we paused a lot of these tasks, assuming something would change, especially in the hours. We knew that the Senate and Assembly were holding lots of hearings to discuss the hour requirement. So we had planned to do our own reviews of the 1,500 hour requirement, the barber requirement of all of our curriculums, but we never made it to do that. So that was not done because we were on hold for what was going to happen during sunset review. And then again, there's some stuff that's not going to ever end. There's a lot of items that are in progress that will continue to be in progress and that are important to keep on our strategic plan to show that we can continue to do it. And then there is honestly stuff on here that we need to work on still that just hasn't been completed yet. So given that, I will pause and answer any questions that you might have on the strategic plan, on any statuses that you might want more information on. And just keep in mind, though, that this is going to be redone with all of you and then potentially our new board members coming on in the year of 2022. And we'll be reinventing a new strategic plan for the next 5 years.
Can I ask you, I would assume that all DCA boards have to go through the strategic plan and present it like that. When you
Yes.
look at our strategic plan, can you roughly compare it to other boards? Are we at about the place all other boards are on their plan, or are we slightly behind or slightly ahead? Is it probably not fair to compare the two?
I think it's pretty fair to say that we're very close to where most others are. Those of you who know me well know that I want to be first.
Surprise, surprise.
I don't think we're there. So we definitely have some work to do and some work that can be done. But then we have our next item called SB 803 that we're going to have to be doing. So it's going to be some balancing act over the next year to try to finalize some of these issues. I think it's going to be really important at our next board meeting in January that we reestablish our committees. We haven't had our committee meetings, and COVID has thrown a wrench in that, but I really think our committees could take on these strategic plan topics, and we could separate it out that way so that we can stay on top of it and really move forward on some of these tasks.
Do we have a breakdown of who's on what committees?
Well, we will make those appointments at the January meeting, because I think our committees right now are lacking.
I think it's like me and Steve on everything.
It is. And so I know, Reese, you've mentioned to me the committees you were interested in. If any, think about that, because that's definitely will be an agenda item on our January meeting. We will be setting those committees, and then we'll start working with each of those committees to set up a calendar for the next year.
Christy, where do you find, because that was one of my questions too, where do you find the available committees at? Because I looked and I was going to send an email, but then I remember we were meeting, so I thought I'd wait and ask for my own knowledge.
Yes, they are listed in your board member procedure manual. So you should have, when you first got appointed, in that giant stack of information you got, there's a very somewhat colorful it's pretty thin, but it's very bright and purple and yellow. They are all in there and explained exactly what their mission is.
Maybe we could move that also to the website so the public knows and we know.
Yep.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I'm glad to hear the committees are going to be more involved. I think that we can get a lot of our work done at the committee level and bring it to the board to save us time during our board meetings. So I'm excited
Definitely.
about that.
All right.
Good job to you, Christy, and the staff. This is a very impressive, detailed report. Thank you very much for it.
Thank you. And I will say thanks to DCA as well. They give us a lot of help on our strategic planning and are great partners in that work. All right, now for the moment we've all been waiting for. In your packets is a very brief, high-level implementation plan of SB 803. So I will start off by saying that we have added a link to the top of our website for SB 803. On our link, we have kind of just a brief summary of what SB 803 does. And we also have a link to the actual bill. For any of our attendees that are on, if you haven't read the actual bill, I encourage you to look at that link, and it has the language that is going into statute. We also have our questions and answers on that front page of our website. Our questions and answers, we worked with very closely with the Bureau of Private Post-Secondary to assist us in those questions. As you know, we only have limited oversight of schools, and we have absolutely no oversight of things like student contracts, how a student drops a course, how a student re-enrolls in a course. That is not within our purview here at the board at all. We can't answer those questions. So super helpful. We've had several meetings with the Bureau of Private Post-Secondary. They have a new bureau chief there, Deborah Cochran, who's been great to work with, and they've been really helpful in getting some of these questions and answers on paper to hopefully assist some of those that are looking for answers. We are updating the questions and answers on a regular basis. We had initially done a Q&A, and then last week we provided an updated Q&A. So we do ask anyone that does have questions on the bill to please email our Barbara Cosmo general email, and those get put into a folder for SB 803 specific questions. And we're taking those questions that we're getting and trying to incorporate them into a Q&A so that we feel if one person has those questions, probably a lot of people have those questions. So we're trying to get that information out there as quickly as possible. We believe that today will be an update to the website for SB 803, and that is we will be providing information to schools on a form and how to apply now to ask for approval on a new course, assuming that schools are wanting to do a new course, because the bill does say that it's not less than 1,000 hours. So a school could maintain a 1,600-hour course or 1,500 hours, or they can opt to get a 1,000-hour course or plus hours approved. we cannot issue those approvals until the law goes into effect. So we're just trying to get ahead of the game. We're trying to get this information so that schools can submit, at least to our board, the information that we would need in order to approve their new courses, and hopefully we can get those approvals out right away in January when the bill becomes effective. So we have a form and we have information that we anticipate to be up to date on our website. As soon as that does happen, we will also are sending information out to schools directly via our email school listserv group. So we have a listserv specifically for schools that they have joined, and get that information directly. So that being said, we have a lot of work to do to implement this bill. And I'm just going to kind of go through each item that we'll be implementing and just give a brief little overview of what we're doing. Of course, as Deputy Director Holmes mentioned earlier, the bill adds a new membership to our overall numbers. So luckily that's the governor's office and DCA who takes on the brunt of that. Who will be looking to recruit additional members to be appointed to the board. I will say that we have 8 members on our board right now, so that is still a quorum. So we shouldn't be delayed in any business going forward if we don't have new appointees. So that's good news that we can still move forward with our board meetings. We have to update our board procedure manual that we were actually just talking about. So that's something that we have to do internally. The next item on this list is the new hairstylist license. So the bill created a 600-hour hairstylist license, non-chemicals. So this is all hair services, but without any types of chemicals whatsoever. This is going to take some time, some substantial time to implement. There will need to be regulations done on this new hairstylist license. Not only that, it does require an exam. An exam doesn't exist right now for this. There are other states that have hairstylist licenses, but they include chemicals. So we will need to do an occupational analysis, which is where we do work with the entire industry to determine what is needed to be tested in this category. So that will be, I've already met with our Office of Professional Examination Services to help us with that. We will also be, a lot of breeze will need to be changed. That is not something we do quickly as well. So it's going to be a lot of work. And then most importantly, we have to do regulations for this. And as some of you know, our regulations do take quite some time. In the midst of SB 803 implementation, we are also implementing the personal service permit. So needless to say, we have a lot happening at our office right now. Our PSP regulations took 4 years to implement. I don't anticipate that this would take that long. But just as an example, that regulations do take quite some time to work on. So you'll be hearing a lot about the hairstylist license at every meeting, because we're hoping to get a draft regulations to you soon. I don't know if we'll make it by January, but we will try. And that will get us started on that process of implementation. But it will be a long process before we have that ready to go.
Can I ask a question?
Chrissy, I have a question.
Yes.
Oh, good. Please go ahead.
Oh, Reese and I both. Okay, I have a question. When it comes to these regulations and drafting these regulations, are there industry experts that are part of this process, or is this straight DCA? Just to get an idea for not just for people that are currently in the industry to understand, but what is the process when we're talking about something that affects the industry when it comes to the regulations?
So it depends on the regulation package. So I'll give you the PSP, for example. No, actually, PSP is a bad example. I'll give you the apprentice package that we're working on. We developed a task force actually, because I'm not a licensee, And I do have a few on staff, but most of us are not licensees. So we always want the industry input. So we try to hold task force meetings or working groups to help us with those regulations. So we had a couple meetings on the apprentice task force where we brought in apprentice sponsors to help us with that. And other organizations we brought in, and we hash it out in usually a task force or a working group meeting. And usually staff is the one who starts off with, we try to put something together just as a starting point. And then we get a lot of industry input on that process. And then it comes to the board. And hopefully we'll have committees established so we could go to a committee first and really work on that language. So we definitely want industry input. We don't want to have our regs get to a point, because you have to, the regulation process is you have to file a 45-day comment period with for the public to be able to submit any comments that they have on a new regulation. And we keep that comment period open for 45 days. That's what's required to do regulations. And in those and then we have a hearing just for those regulations. And then any of those comments that were received, we have to provide back to the board with an answer to those comments. And a lot of it is, why we're doing what we're doing. The ideal situation is to not have any comments when that 45-day comment period happens. And we only get there if we answer all those questions ahead of time and work with the industry ahead of time. So we've always wanted to include the industry in the regulation process, because the regulation process is our process. It's not the legislature. It's the board's process. So we definitely, I probably way too long-winded on that answer, but to answer your question is, yes, we call in industry representatives to help us with some of those technical aspects of anything we're trying to change.
Thank you.
Yes, just going back to the quorum question you were mentioning earlier. Do we know the number that we would have to have at each meeting in 2022? I'm assuming that we will now, with the placements, that we'll have a higher number for quorum if 8 is still fits, but if a couple of us are missing, what's the number that needs to be here?
Sabina, I believe it's 7.
This is Sabina. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. My microphone is working. That is correct. So it's majority plus 1, or half plus 1. So
Okay.
Once you get those numbers of, well, actually, yeah. So it might be rough with if we don't get people appointed right away, but hopefully we will.
Right, and that's what I was thinking. Is just that we will definitely all need to be here in order for us to have a meeting, since our quorum number is higher starting in January. And we also had one other question back on the issue of distribution of information about 803. You had mentioned that we have the website, but we have a communication system with the schools. Do we, and I'm naive, this is my first meeting, do we have a communication system with licensees?
We do. We have, we did a lot of communication through email for COVID. So we do have a very large listserv. We have it separated by county because we had to do that for COVID. We would give specific information on their counties. And then we have our master listserv for licensees. One of the drawbacks to that is an email address is not a requirement for licensure. So not everyone provides their email address. When we are at shows, like hopefully the one we'll be in January, and we usually do 2 to 3 shows a year, we have a sign-up list just for our interested parties group, and we let anyone sign up to that. So our interested parties list is in addition to what we have just from our database. So anybody can sign up for our interested parties, and we have that link on our website. And it's I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but I know it's grown considerably over the last couple of years as we've really tried to promote getting information out via email.
So are we disseminating information about 803 to that world?
We
Or
have
just-
not disseminated information on 803 to that world yet.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so moving on, the next is the change of scope to the esthetician. The SB 803 made some changes that will now allow an esthetician to perform some additional services. We are working to get information out to licensees on that aspect. And an interesting thing is 803 now allows an esthetician in their scope and in their curriculum to learn how to tint lashes and brows. This has always been only available to a cosmetologist because of hair coloring. It fell under the hair coloring aspect. The problem with the tinting, and we want our estheticians to be able to tint, the problem is that the FDA doesn't believe that there are products out there that are safe to be used to tint around the eye or around the eye at all, lashes or brows. So the FDA has put out several notices that tinting there's an import alert on tint. So basically there's not supposed to be any tint in our country at all per the FDA. But unfortunately, we all know that's not true. Every other state allows the tinting of lashes and brows. And not every other state, but most states definitely allow the tinting and lashing. For any of you who have served on our DRC and any of you that will serve on our DRC, it's very common that we find the tint in the establishments. And it's a violation because we have a regulation that states you can't use anything that's disapproved by the FDA. I think it's something we should be talking about in the future, and it's definitely something we are working on with, we have some revised health and safety regulations that are going to be going through the process as well. And so I think we have a big opportunity here to make some changes in that arena. But we will, for an esthetician to be able to legally provide that service in their salon, they would need, we would need to either change our regulations, or a manufacturer would need to get their product approved by the FDA, which doesn't seem to be happening because this has been going on for quite some time. Estheticians will now be allowed to dermaplane, something that they haven't been able to do. For those of you who don't know what dermaplaning is, it is basically hair removal, but it is basically a shaving of the face. It works great for exfoliation as well as removing the tiny peach fuzz hair. I'm not an esthetician, so I hope I didn't ruin that. I'm sure Wendy's probably having a heart attack with how I'm describing things right now. But we definitely feel here at our office that this is a safe practice that estheticians should have been allowed to do. And so we are happy to see that the bill did take that into consideration and allowed estheticians to do that process. It also allows extension of body work. So really in the past, estheticians have always been taught to work from the décolleté, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, and above. And now, lots of estheticians do back facials, do lots of other services to the body, and this will now allow that as well. So it is a definite benefit to the estheticians with that scope of practice changing. And we are currently working right now on information that we will be getting out to estheticians. We're putting together some industry bulletins on safety because we want to make sure that now that estheticians are able to do these services, that we want to make sure that they still are maintaining safety and protecting our consumers. So that information is in the process of being developed. And again, just for everyone on the meeting today, none of this goes into effect until January 1. So we get that question a lot every day that people want to do things now, and none of it does go into effect until January 1. All right. Next is the pre-apprentice training. The bill changed the pre-apprentice training. We had discussions about this training in our task force. There was a lot of, we had Division of Apprenticeship Standards. Oh, I missed one, sorry. I'll just finish with pre-apprentice training. The pre-apprentice training now will need to be provided by the board. So this is something we are looking at as to how we will provide that. It's going to take extensive implementation. And so it's on our task list internally of what we're putting together. It's a 39-hour course of laws and regulations. So we're going to be kind of piggybacking off of our health and safety course that was already done, and trying to combine that and put a little more laws and regulations into that so that we have a starting point already and something to build off of for this training. And then a new apprentice will have to take that 39-hour course from the board in order to get licensed as an apprentice and start their apprenticeship program.
Christy,
I skipped over. Yes.
I have a quick question on that pre-apprentice training. I know that it's administered by the board, but will there be different sites that will be able to be, like, can the schools or can someone sign to be a testing site for this? I just wanted to get a little clarity on.
No, our plan is to make that an online course. And so we'll be working possibly with a vendor and seeing how we can make that kind of an online, kind of like our training that we've all had to do with our sexual harassment training. We're looking at to do it in that type of platform. Okay. Next is I skipped over reciprocity. So SB 803 modified reciprocity, that to come into California, if you were licensed for 3 out of the last 5 years, you would qualify for a license. And now it is license for license. So if you were licensed in another state, you can come and be licensed here in California. That is that implementation takes some system modifications to Breeze that we are working on, updating all of our forms as well. All right.
If you have a question in that regard?
Yes.
Would that be an hour for hour kind of credential? Would they have to be at least at a minimum of what California requires? Or is it just for anybody?
They do not. It would be license for license. So for instance, in Oregon, they issue a hairstylist license. If you wanted to come into California, you would end up needing to go take additional hours of skincare and nail care to become a licensed cosmetologist in California. So it's license for license. But we don't look at the hours, or we don't look at the exams. All right.
Thank you.
Moving to the removal of the pre-app, we have sent a notice out. Okay, so the pre-application process was created because this board, prior to me coming, has been notoriously backlogged in exams, and prior to COVID as well, because COVID wasn't kind to us. And so the pre-application process was created to allow a school to pre-app their students when they were getting close to graduation. So the schools would tell us when they believe their anticipated graduation date, and we would schedule their exam as close to that anticipated graduation date as possible. Now that there's no practical exam, there's no more need for the pre-application process. So everyone will apply when they've completed, and because it's a written exam and because we already have an existing contract for computer-based testing, candidates will be able to schedule themselves now. So, and at any of the PSI sites throughout California. So this section is just removing the pre-app language. Excuse me. It's a significant change to our Breeze system, so we're already working on that with DCA to get those changes done. We've notified schools to stop sending pre-apps in. sorry, just because we are booked out through the end of the year at our exam site. So everyone that was going to get a practical exam date has it. And so we wouldn't schedule any more practical exams after January 1. So we've let schools know to not pre-app their students. To
Christy,
just submit, yes.
I have a quick question for, are other states using or successfully using e-exams?
Like, you mean if the candidates like at home to do their exam?
Exactly. Exactly. I know a lot of people are going to that and they have a way of monitoring them with a video camera and other things, firms that just do that. Have we ever looked at that possibility?
We have, and it's definitely something we could consider. I know that Texas did it, and I believe Tennessee is implementing it now.
Okay.
So it's definitely something we could look at.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I have a question.
Uh-huh.
For people who are currently in school and say their date to finish is not until February and March, would they still be subjected to the practical because that's the program that they started under? Or regardless of anything, January 1st, no more practical no matter where you were at for school?
January 1st, there'll be no more practical.
Okay.
All right, so that's actually the next item is the removal of the practical. This is probably our biggest to-do list. As you can imagine, we have about 30 staff at these two facilities, so we are working with them. We are working with, I think every unit within DCA has had a meeting with me for assistance, facilities, contracts, budgets. There's a lot to do with our exams. We have equipment, we have so much to do. So we are working with HR, our HR office right now to determine what our options are for our staff. That's our most important aspect right now that we're working on, is to try to get them information. Our examiners are in positions that are called permanent intermittent. So they don't work full time, and most of them still work behind the chair. Sorry. And we, but we do have some permanent staff that has been with us for a very, very long time. And they're in different cities, obviously. We will no longer have sites in Glendale and Fairfield. We will not have offices there because they are just examination sites. So we're working with our HR office. There's a process. There is this is not the first time this has happened in the state. So there is a process that we will follow. I'm meeting with them again this week on that process and what we do to provide information to our employees and assist them in hopefully finding other employment with the state. There's a way that they get put on a list, in a sense, that allows them to be looked at maybe more closer than they would on a regular basis. So we have a couple people that are retiring. I can tell you our examiner that's in our Fairfield site that is running that site for us right now is retiring, and I think she would have retired already, and she's graciously staying on for us to help us. Excuse me. But it is a big project that we're working on with our exam staff to get them the information they need. And then what to do with all the equipment and how to shut down 2 physical sites. Any questions on that?
Chrissy,
Yeah,
I
what
have
are
a
you gonna
question.
do with all that stuff?
That's one of the issues we're working on. We have some options, and there's a process for that as well in the state. We have cubicles there that basically we own, so we will have an equipment that maybe we will need, maybe we won't need, but we have to go through every single item that is in both of those sites document it and determine what will happen with that. In the state, we call it a surplus process, where it's equipment that we no longer need, and we have to go through a process that's quite a bit of paperwork to surplus that equipment out. We'll we'll be looking, there's different entities that we could donate some of those items to, because there's some items there, the testing tables that they use for the manicuring and the esthetician, probably not another state agency is going to have a use for those. So we'll be looking at a process for donating equipment that will not be needed up here, or not able to surplus it out. But we will find a home for everything. Was there another question? All right.
Yes, Chris.
Yes.
Sorry, Chris. I had a question in regard to the employment issue.
Yes.
We know that we've had kind of a lack in the amount of inspectors that we've had. Will the people who are losing their job, to say in these other areas or other departments, would they have like first opportunity to potentially go into the arena of becoming inspector?
Unfortunately, no, well, it's not a definite no, but it's a probably no. And that is because to become an inspector, you have to meet a certain minimum qualifications that the state established many, many years ago. One example of those requirements is 12 units of criminal justice in college. So it depends. And then they would also have to take a test. So it's not an equivalent classification that someone could just be put into it. I wish, because I think we have people that would do that. But they would still have to meet those minimum qualifications. So that's something we're looking at as well.
Thank you, Christy.
Uh-huh. All right. Okay, so next is the mobile units. The mobile unit is actually going to be a fairly easy implementation process. What we have to do is update our forms. There is not much in our Breeze system that we will have to change. So that's that's one of our easiest items that we can do. So we have a task list that we're working on to get those applications updated, and so that they're ready to go January 1 to be posted up on our website, so that individuals who are looking to apply for that license can do so. Next is the curriculum. So as we've talked about, the curriculum for Barber and Cosmo has been reduced to 1,000 hours. It will require approval of a course by the board, and it's a non-substantive change for the Bureau of Private Post-Secondary. That information is in our Q&A. For our part in this curriculum is, as I mentioned, we anticipate the website being updated today with a form that schools can fill out and submit their information to obtain approval for their new course. So I think one of the most important things and most common question we're getting asked is what schools do with the practical operations. So the bill took that away. The bill moved our curriculum out of regulation and into statute. And that means that it took out all of our curriculum where it said you had to do 25 shaves or 14 haircuts. Those aren't the numbers, but as an example. And schools tracked those practical operations. There is no more tracking of the practical operations. So the board will not be setting out a minimum requirements for each of those practical operations. Instead, what the bill does is block all the curriculum, kind of lumps it together in a sense. Again, that language is in the bill. It's also going to be on a chart that we've created to help people, and that will be going up with the application that's going to be posted online today. But basically, schools need to look at their curriculum and fit it into the less hours. It's the school's option for how they determine to track their students on practical operations and on hours, because the law now only requires the board to set forth that there's 200 hours in haircutting, and then it lists all the specifics that need to be included in those 200 hours. So the bill is clear to what content area is included in each of those categories. And that's what you will find on our website later today. We did a chart that is basically what the bill says, but it's probably a little more user-friendly. So schools, it's very hard. We are getting so many questions on when is the board going to tell the schools how many practical operations are going to be needed, and that was taken out of our authority. So that is now set as technical and practical training as a whole. So that's what the POTs are going to need to describe, the proof of trainings. One of the other issues is we are getting tons of questions from students who are enrolled with schools right now who are saying, well, I've met the 1,000 hours, can I take my test? No, you cannot. The law requires a completion of a course. So a student is enrolled with a school, and they are entered into a contract with a school. And I assume that contract is for 1,600 hours. Maybe it's for 1,800 hours. That would depend on the school. But you're in a contract with a school for 1,600 hours. Just getting to 1,000 hours doesn't make you qualify for the exam. You would have to complete a 1,000-hour program to qualify for the exam. So and that's in our Q&A as well. But it is one of our top questions that we're getting, because people think they can be eligible for the exam just by completing 1,000 hours. We don't know that those 1,000 hours fall into what the bill language says. We also don't have any approved 1,000-hour programs. So there's no way to be completing 1,000 hours and be eligible for an exam. We recommend, and this is within lots of discussions with the Bureau of Private Post-Secondary, that if a student is within those hours, and they should finish out that contract with that school. Should a student in a school decide to drop that student and re-enroll in a 1,000-hour program and submit a POT to us that they have completed that 1,000-hour approved program, that's between the school and the student. The board doesn't have any oversight over what goes on between a student and the school. The BPPE does, but that's not our purview at all. We need a proof of training that shows that individual has completed a course, an approved course. Right now, schools have their approved courses, and anyone that's coming to the exam site now or to apply for the exam has to show a completion of that approved course. So when schools begin getting the 1,000-hour approval after the first of the month, then they can start submitting, if a student has completed those competencies that are within that curriculum, then they can submit a completion that they are attesting that student has completed a 1,000-hour approved course. Does that make sense? Any questions on that? And again, this is in our Q&A. This is any schools that have questions on this. We really encourage you to email us, because we're using those emails to build on our Q&A. No questions? Okay.
Okay, I have a question.
Okay, I thought you did. I thought it was waiting.
Yeah, so when we talk about schools, I just want to be clear. There's schools and there's apprenticeship programs. So they're totally two different entities that follow two different guidelines, correct?
Yes.
Right. Yes. Okay. So the apprenticeship program, that is staying as is, or is that off the table? That's not even for us to even discuss because it's an apprenticeship program?
The apprenticeship program that is 3,200 hours, that 3,200 hours, which just happen to be double 1,600 hours, it's actually 3,200 hours set by the Division of Apprenticeship Standards. So we cannot change that.
Okay. So, okay, because I just want to be clear, because that's going to be that next, even if I have that question, that next thing is, okay, so then the validity, or I guess the benefit of the apprenticeship program at 3,200 or traditional schooling now at 1,000 hours, making that distinction of the program itself. So because the apprenticeship program has their own 3,200 hours, has no bearing on what is happening with SB 803.
Correct.
Okay.
All right. Moving on to externs. SB 803 increased our the allowance for an extern. However, there was a mistake in the bill as it left out barbers. So we will be asking for cleanup language. I have already scheduled to meet with the Senate Business and Professions staff next month to start working on some cleanup language for this bill. This is one that was just an oversight. The barber extern aspect got left out. So we are hoping to get that cleaned up very quickly.
I have a question because I didn't look exactly in the bill. Did they ever change that total clocked hours of 25%?
They did not.
So
that's what the bill currently says. Or that's what was signed into law. 25%. Yes.
Because we were trying to get 50%, correct?
Right.
Awesome. Thanks.
The next is we change the words booth renter was removed from our survey. It didn't mean that booth renting is not allowed anymore. It's just not a technical term in our law. So it was removed from a survey. So all this does is remove is a cleanup language to a survey. Actually, the practice status survey that we talked about earlier says independent contractor / booth renter, and it takes the word booth renter out and leaves independent contractor. Does not mean that booth renter is not allowed. And then next is our fines. And so we are required to look at our fines and look at what a direct impact to consumer safety each of those fines has. So this is definitely something we would want to set up a task force on. It's going to take some work to go through each one of our fines. And as you know, we have quite a few, and really look at the risk involved in each of those violations and determine if it still needs to actually be a fine. And so that is something we will be looking to set up a task force on. Again, this will take a regulation change. So this is definitely going to be one of the slower implementations than some of the rest of this. But it is something we are going to want to start working on early in 2022 so that we can get that language developed and start that process. Any questions on that? All right. And then lastly is just some of the additional items. I think we've added to this since we put this together for this meeting. But just some of what we in our office are working on. We're creating our information page, preparing our cleanup language, and then also really looking at our existing regulations, because there's a lot of regulation cleanup that will have to happen based on this bill. So a lot of work involved in the implementation of this bill that hopefully we will keep you updated on through the course of this work. And I know we don't meet again until January, but I will keep you informed of our progress for January 1 when the bill does go into effect. And as for that, that is the end of my executive officer report.
Thanks, Christy. That was very informative. And, considering the governor just signed this 2 weeks ago, this is about as close to reinventing ourselves as this board has ever been. I mean, a lot of major work has to be done on this. And like anything, the devil's in the details. And let me just congratulate you and your staff for getting it to this stage, this preliminary stage in just the last few weeks. I know there's a tremendous amount of work, and it probably goes up and down the staff to assemble information. So, we're with you on this.
Thank
The other thing too is we've been in session for about 3.5 hours. I estimate we probably have 30 or 40 minutes more. How is the board as far as being comfortable? Do you want to take a lunch break in between? Do you want to power through the next 30 or 40 minutes? What is the consensus?
I would prefer to power through.
Me too. I second that.
My question would be, do we know how much public comment we might have?
We don't. That's kind of an unknown. But judging from other meetings where there have been subjects like this, it's been pretty,
I will tell you that the next few items on our agenda before we get to public comment are going to be fairly quick.
I thought so. I thought we wouldn't have much left after this.
Christy,
no one has any blood sugar issues or anything. You're okay with us going through?
I do have a question though for Christy, really quick. Do you foresee any special meetings being held by the board prior to January because of all the little intricate things that need to be done and completed?
I do not. I don't foresee that. I do think we are, reaching out to some industry associations to do some outreach. So we would certainly let the board members know about that. I know I've recently had some conversations with Fred Jones about trying to get some information out and working with his group on kind of doing a Q&A. So hopefully we're working to put something together for that I think will be really helpful for our schools. And we'll certainly let the board members know what is going on with that. But I don't foresee any formal board meeting by the end of the year.
That's
I have a
go ahead.
Sorry, I have a question just generally for Chrissy as well. Again, this plan is amazing and very extensive, and I just wanted to hear your thoughts on whether you believe we have enough staffing to do that. I mean, it's, on top of all of these things, you still have to continue kind of normal board operations, and so is more staffing needed, and how, is DCA able to step in and provide more support? I'd love to hear just kind of what's going on behind the scenes for you guys.
Well, it's been busy. DCA has been a huge partner with us on this. Like I mentioned, I think I've met with every unit within the administrative unit of DCA in the last week. They have been super helpful. I've never closed down a site, so we didn't know what to do. Or had to deal with a staffing situation like we're in right now. So DCA has really stepped up and been helping us with all of that. As for staffing, the only thing I would say is many of you know my right hand is out right now, and so hopefully she's coming back soon. But I think we're okay. I think we are in a position where we are maintaining our workload. We have hired additional staff in our licensing unit, so that's been really helpful with making sure that we don't have a backlog. We have quite a few new inspectors on board as well. So everything workload wise is flowing very well. So myself, Carrie Harris, our Deputy Executive Officer, and my management team have been working very hard on SB 803 and all of this work that you're seeing in front of you. So I think we're okay right now. I think we'll live.
That's a good transition. Let's move into
I just want to ask one thing, make one comment. Sorry, Steve. When you were talking about doing groups to help you with this, have you talked to PBA, the Professional Beauty Association, about reaching out to people in our industry?
I had I actually saw Myra on one of my trips to DC, Myra is the government affairs individual for the PBA. And so, yes, we have been talking to her as well, but I haven't reached out to her as doing any outreach events. So that's definitely something I could do. I know I have talked to her about doing the January show, and January, the bill goes into effect January 1, and I believe the show in Long Beach is just a couple weeks after that, 2 to 3 weeks after. So we're, and I anticipate we will get a lot of questions at that show.
Awesome. That's, yeah. She's a good relationship, which I know you already know. So just want to throw that out there. Thanks.
All
Moving.
right, let's move on to item number 8, the proposed board meeting dates. And Christy, you want to walk us through that? The only thing that could be difficult on this, which we're all aware of, is strategic planning, SB 803 subcommittees. It just seems like we better be prepared for more meetings than the 4 coming up in 2022.
Definitely. What this is just our idea. We don't need a motion. This is just what we want to show you, is that this is where we're going, and make sure if any members have any absolute, these dates are totally bad for us, then we would welcome that. But we try, and this kind of goes to what Reese had mentioned earlier, is the first thing we will do is we try to work around our board members' schedules as best as we can. We try to make it so that you're all here. We in the past, we've accidentally planned board meetings at a at a same day as a trade show that everyone was attending. So, these dates are flexible, but if any, January for sure, we want to get on the books, because that will be a Sacramento board meeting, and we would like to have that meeting in person. And the reason why we'd like to have that meeting, excuse me, in person, is because we will probably do a hybrid meeting, meaning that we'll have all our board members present, and we will have the public is able to attend, but we'll also have the ability for people to call in like they do on this type of forum. So that's something that other boards have already started doing. So it's something we would like to do, is have this hybrid, just to ensure that we can still get the public access, like so much has been on these webcast meetings. So it's a tentative meeting. If anybody has any concerns over the dates, you can just let me know.
I just have a question on what you just mentioned regarding hybrid meetings. The hybrid would not count for the board members, is that correct?
Correct. We really are trying to get our board members back together.
That's a very good idea, to get the board back together too, for sure. Okay, so if you have any problems, contact Christy on those dates, and let's try and work through that. But we all know that we're probably going to have more dates than that, given the amount of work that's required. Let's then move through, have Christy walk us through legislative updates.
All right. So in your packets is an update on the bills that we were following. I will just go through each one of these. AB 29 was a bill that we were watching. That bill did not move forward, so we do not need to talk about it. The next bill is AB 107. This bill did go through, however, we were taken out of it. So this was a military bill for temporary licenses, but they changed the bill, and it does not impact our board. Moving on to the next bill, which is AB 231. This was a bill that we were in support of, that was to extend the requirement that impacted manicurists when it came to the past bill of AB 5. AB 5, which is the worker classification bill, and it exempted manicurists from that. And this bill addressed that, but this bill did not move forward. However, you're going to hear about that same language here in a second, because that language got put in another bill, which was signed. So moving to the next bill, which is AB 492. This was the extern bill that was presented that we did oppose. However, this language did get put into SB 803. So this language did make it into our statute. And this is the one where we will need to do some cleanup to make sure our barbers get added to that. Next is AB 1561. This is the bill that impacted the manicurists operating as independent contractors. We didn't actually see this bill, so we didn't take a position, but it was what the previous bill that didn't move forward, it did the exact same thing. So this bill was signed, and it extends that inoperative date for the exemption to licensed manicurists to January 1, 2025. All right. The next bill is SB 607. This bill was signed. It is, trying to remember what this is. Sorry, I got mixed up here. This bill required a waiver of the license application fee for someone who is, I believe it's a military bill as well. Right. So it's waiving the fees for those who are in the military. We supported this bill, and this bill was signed. Lastly is SB 803, which we have talked about. And that is it for the legislative updates.
Good. So no motions are necessary on those. So let's move to item 10 on the agenda, which is regulation status update.
All right, on our regulation packages, we have a package that is currently going through the 45-day comment period on instructional materials. That was some language that we did clean up, where the language stated that the national organization had to approve textbooks. So we are cleaning that language up because the national organization doesn't do a formal approval of textbooks. So that regulation is going through the package. This will be on our agenda at our next board meeting, hopefully to finalize that language. And the other updates that we have is we had to put several packages on hold because SB 803 impacted the language that we had already worked on. That is transfer of credit, externs, and the disciplinary review committee. So now that SB 803 has been signed, we are working to start moving those regulation packages back through. We're pulling those regulation packages, and we have to determine if we need to change the language based on SB 803. So we'll, if we do, we'll have to bring that language back to the board at our next meeting. And then the following at the bottom, regulation packages are under internal review with the Department of Consumer Affairs. That's our apprenticeship and our disciplinary guidelines. So we should be hearing back from DCA's reg unit on that. So on how will proceed with those. So no motions needed on regs. That was just an update, and that is all.
Great. In that case, let's move to public comment.
This is the moderator, and I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on agenda item 10, regulation status update, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. And I will pause a moment to allow the public time to access that Q&A panel and submit their requests. And it looks like we have a couple requests coming in. And just as a reminder to members of the public, we are not responding to raised hands. Please access that Q&A panel if you would like to make a comment. So go in the order that comments are received. And our first, I believe we are taking public comments just for item 10. Is that, I want to confirm if that is correct?
No, I think what we've done is there was no movement needed on 10, no motion on 10.
Oh, I apologize.
To number 11.
I apologize. I didn't realize we moved
No
to public comment for items not on the agenda. Thank you. Wendy Jacobs, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak in a 30-second warning. I will request to unmute your microphone now. All right, and you are unmuted.
I think I'm live now. I'm not sure.
Yes, you are.
Awesome. Good news. I haven't had a heart attack. Thank you, Christy. This is Wendy Jacobs, Wendy Cochran, California Aesthetic Alliance. Thank you very much for all meeting today. We're very appreciative to hear all this really positive industry advancement, especially for licensed estheticians. It's been a long time coming, since 1978, and we see some really excellent changes in our future here. Quick acknowledgement to Dr. Jamie Schrabeck for being on the official bill analysis for AB 1561 in advocating for licensed manicurists, and also all the estheticians that contributed to the passing of AB 1003, Lorena Gonzalez's wage theft bill. And we really stepped up on that, and congratulations to all of you estheticians out there. I would like to say that the tint issue is going to be problematic. There are no tints. There are also the topic of hennas. Hennas are now, traditionally, they used to be a different process than what they are now. In the industry now, henna is considered more of a skin stain, and they are not made in the same manner as traditional Indian henna. Also, today's coal tarts are actually synthetic in bases, and the EU has been permitting lash tints and brow tints since about 2010 with little to no injury reported. So this is a big thing that we need to discuss. And we look forward to having a Q&A opportunity with the board. As usual, you can always reach out to me. I'd happy to contribute to dermaplaning and lash and brow certifications and information for those safety industry bulletins. Thanks so much.
All right, we will move on to our next individual who has requested public comment. Individual identified as Tala D. Tala, I request to unmute your microphone now. You have 2 minutes to speak in a 30-second warning.
Hi, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Tala Di Benedetto. I'm litigation counsel for the PETA Foundation, and I'd like to discuss unlawful fish spa services currently being offered at Sequest Folsom and request the board take action to enforce its current ban on fish spa services. Sequest Folsom is currently offering fish pedicures despite the fact that the board has already banned the procedure in the state because they can't comply with applicable sanitation requirements and can cause infection, skin irritation, and toenail loss. PETA has tried on 2 separate occasions to report Sequest Folsom, and both times we have not received any, we received legally suspect reasons for why the board can't currently enforce the ban on fish pedicures at Sequest. Fish pedicures like the ones offered at Sequest Folsoms are not pedicures involving manipulation of the cuticles of the feet, but rather use small fish who eat dead skin cells off customers' feet as a form of exfoliation. Because the service involves the cleaning, treating, or beautification of the feet, it falls under the legal definition of cosmetology, and any establishment performing the service is subject to the jurisdiction of the board. The fact that Sequest charges a fee specifically for these services removes any exemption that might apply. Although Sequest refers to its pedicures as an animal experience, the service is no different from any other fish pedicure, nor does the law recognize any such distinction. Sequest shouldn't be able to evade regulation simply because they're labeling the same service as something different based solely on where it's offered. This type of massive loophole may encourage other establishments to offer cosmetology services misleadingly labeled as entertainment, knowing they could similarly avoid regulation. The services offered at Sequest pose no lesser threat to the public safety and as the same procedure that would be offered at a regular salon. And for these reasons, we request that the board take some action to prohibit fish spas at all facilities that provide and charge for the service pursuant to its authority to regulate cosmetology within the state. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, this is the moderator, and we will move on to our next individual's requested public comment. Peter W. All right, Peter, you will be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. I will request to unmute your microphone now. All right, and you are unmuted.
Hello?
Hello, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I would just like to know if there are required hours in lecture. I understand the board isn't going to regulate student credits as far as operations, but what about lecture theory?
Christy Underwood, again, this is a public comment, so we are not able to respond to these questions. However, we highly encourage you to send your questions to a Barber Cosmo email address. It's barbercosmo@dca.ca.gov.
All right, this is the moderator. We move on to our next individual who has requested public comment. Individual identified as MacBook. One moment while I find you in the, there we go, in the attendee list. All right, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. I am requesting to unmute your microphone now. All right, and you are unmuted.
Hi, I just had a quick question. Well, actually a comment, and hopefully I can get this answer soon. I emailed the board and I haven't received any messages. I have students that have, let's say, about 400 hours, and they are thinking of transferring to the new 1,000-hour program when it's approved after January 1st. Is there a way to find out how we would be able to transfer their existing practical credits into the new required theory credits that they're going to be required to do for the 1,000-hour program? Is there a way, a chart or something that we're going to be able to transfer those existing credits to the new program if they choose to enter the new program? And I hope I get an answer for that. Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator, and we'll move on to our next individual's requested public comment. Sandra Honesto. One moment while I find you in the attendee list. All right, Sandra, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. I will request to unmute your microphone now. All right, and you are unmuted.
I know that we seem to keep going back to send an email so that you can get an answer, but specifically, I have a question about students who are in my program now who will finish in December, who already pre-apped and their checks have been processed and cashed, and we're in limbo because we have no idea if they're going to test before January 1st or after January 1st. So as an instructor, I have no idea how to prepare my students for the test. Do I teach them the old way to get ready for the practical in case they test in December? Or do I now say, no, you're not going to have a practical and you're only going to do a written test? And how do I prepare them for that, being that they're going to finish mid-December? And we've sent the email and we just get roundabout answers. We can't get specific answers. And it's super frustrating that all of these changes are happening. And yet as instructors, we're kind of left in limbo. I don't even know how to address the questions that my students have. And I know you keep saying send emails, but I keep getting roundabout answers. I don't get a specific answer. And so here I am. I have students graduate in December. I don't know what test to get them prepared for.
I would highly recommend that when you send that email, you ask about your specific students and provide us their info. And that way we can look up their actual record. We are still processing work. So there are still lots of students who are getting exam dates for this year. So we need the actual student name so we can tell you exactly where they are.
All right, this is the moderator. We'll move on to our next individual who has requested public comment. Individual identified as MVASQ. You'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. I am unmuting your microphone or requesting to unmute your microphone now. All right, and you are unmuted.
By licensed cosmetologists or barbers, since estheticians will be allowed to perform the service.
Hi, this is Christy. I didn't hear that comment at all.
Would dermal plane procedure be allowed to be performed by a licensed cosmetologist or a licensed barber, since estheticians will be allowed to perform this procedure?
I believe so, yes, but I would recommend you send us an email so we can double check that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator. We will move on to our next individual's requested public comment. Individual identified as Sunil Sharma. You'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. I am requesting to unmute your microphone now. This is the moderator, Sunil Sharma. If you would like to speak, you'll need to click that unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device. All right, in that case, we will move on to our next individual who has requested public comment. Individual identified as Alicia Orabella. You'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. I will request to unmute your microphone now. All right, and you are unmuted.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Great meeting today, so informative, and congrats on everyone that worked on SB 803 and 1561. Very excited. So my name is Alicia Orabella. I'm a licensed cosmetologist, owner of Orabella Hair Studio in Oakland, and founder of Pro Beauty Inside. In reference to Steve Weeks suggesting raising the fines for not allowing inspections, I feel that we would all benefit from raising the bar, taking into consideration the immense amount of changes currently underway within our industry. Moving forward, a minimum of a $250 to $750 fine for denying an inspector into our establishment seems shamefully low. Specifically, when we compare that number to the $50 to $200 fines for disinfection of electrical tools, pedicure equipment, cleaning log, shampoo trays, bowls, and treatment tables, neck dusters, brushes, not clean or sanitary, etc. As we know, our licenses are for consumer protection. With such an egregious act, a minimum fine of $1,000 would seem justified. Thank you very much for your time.
This is the moderator. Let me confirm one more thing before we continue Q&A. All right. It appears that that was our last individual who has requested public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel now? Oh, I apologize. We did have a request from Jamie Schrabeck. Jamie, I will request to unmute your microphone in just a moment. Just as a reminder, the Q&A feature for WebEx is only being used as a means for members of the public to indicate that they would like to verbally make a comment. So if you would like to make a comment, please state comment in that Q&A function. If you have a question specifically for the board, they have stated that they would like you to email them at the email address that is listed below. So Jamie Schrabeck, you'll be given 2 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. I will request to unmute your microphone now. All right, and you are unmuted.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Jamie Schrabeck, licensed manicurist and employee-based salon owner of Precision Nails. I do want to thank you for mentioning AB 1561. It was hugely important that licensed manicurists be treated fairly and equally as our other licensees of the BBC with regard to the ability to be independent contractors in our industry. And I want to point out that we are going to have some issues around labor going forward. We have not resolved those issues through the education we've provided thus far. And even though our board does not report to the Labor Committee, we appear in front of the Business and Professions Committee. Much of what we do intersects with labor. So this matters for both licensees and for students, including those who are part of apprenticeships and externships. Eventually, I'd like to see those as permits and not licenses, because if we're going to focus on licensees being able to be compensated for services, I would like to have this verbiage corrected so that we make it clear what those labor laws are so we can eliminate the extensive exploitation that happens within our industry. Thank you so much.
All right, this is the moderator, and that was our last individual's requested public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A function?
Please close it. Thank you. All right, now we're going to move to item 12, our last item. Are any suggestions for future agenda items? And remember, all board members, or anytime you have a concern, you want to put something on the agenda, please contact Christy or myself, and let's build it into the agenda, because all of us have to be heard. But if there's anything now that you have any suggestions on? Okay. If there is, you know how to reach us. So we are now at the point where we've worked hard. You put in long hours, twice our normal hours, I think, but so much has been covered in depth, and so much significant detail had to be covered today. Thank you all for giving of your time to be here, because I know it's an imposition sometimes. You've got a life of your own too. But thank you all for helping, and I'll look forward to seeing you at the next meeting. Thanks, gang.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye,
everyone.
everybody.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you.